Joining us now from Washington, the United States Secretary of Energy in the Trump administration, Secretary Dan Brouilette. Mr. Secretary, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, John, great to be with you this morning. How are you?
Never better, and thank you for joining us today. Much of us in Virginia that really believed in the pipeline, the Atlantic Coast pipeline, the jobs it would bring, the energy that it would bring, the number of manufacturing that could move along the pipeline, along my area of coverage, which is basically West Virginia to rural North Carolina, which is all the stations I have. The pipeline basically fits my coverage area. We were shocked on Sunday when Dominion Energy and Duke Power abandoned the pipeline, sold it to another company, the Hathaway Company. Give us your perspective, Mr. Secretary.
Sure, John. Happy to do that. Yes, it's a disappointing decision, but I must say, John, it's an economically rational one. You know, the challenge all of these companies face, and I must say, look, the two CEOs who run both Dominion and Virginia, Tom Farrell and Lynn down in North Carolina at Duke Energy, these are two of the best CEOs we have in the utility business. They're very, very smart people. If they can't make this work, then we got some serious challenges. And I'll tell you what the challenges are. The challenges are environmental activists are using the legal system to block these projects. Duke and Dominion spent $3 billion over 6 years to get to this point. They took their case all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won. And they still could not see a path forward to make this pipeline economical because environmental activists were going to use the remainder of the permit process to drag this longer. So it's a very, very disappointing decision, but at the same time, I can understand the logic for having to move away. We have to fix this. The lost opportunity here is just absolutely enormous. I mean, the Virginia Chamber of Commerce has estimated that this is going to cost Virginia over $1 billion in economic activity and as many as 9,000 jobs, John. So it's a very disappointing decision.
Mr. Secretary, so what happens now? I mean, you have kind of a pipeline that's half built. We thought that after the Supreme Court made the decision a week ago to let the pipeline go under the Appalachian Trail, everybody was celebrating that as a huge victory. Then we had the decision in Montana, and things went south. Can you lay that out for us, sir?
Sure. So somewhat separate issues, but all related in a certain way. Again, as I said, environmental activists are using the court systems to deny access to this important energy infrastructure. And what they're doing they're using selected courts around the country. For instance, they'll go to the Ninth Circuit in California where everyone can fairly well predict what the outcome will be if it's an infrastructure project that's related to any type of fossil fuel. So, they know they're going to get a victory there. And then you're faced with the prospect of potentially paying for a court case at the Supreme Court if they take it up at all. So that's what happened in the cases out west with the Keystone Pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline. We've seen it now in one other facility. We expect these fights to continue. It's very, very important that we do what we can at the federal level to reform the regulatory process, and we've done exactly that. The president directed me very early in the administration to remove the restrictions that were being put in place by things like the previous administration's Clean Power Plan. So I moved very aggressively with my predecessor, former Secretary Rick Perry, to remove those types of hurdles to these infrastructure projects. And why is that important? Well, obviously it's for jobs, and we want these jobs created in America. But, John, I'll tell you as well, under this administration, the United States has become the number one producer of natural gas and oil in the world. We're larger than Saudi Arabia, larger than Russia. Our challenge today is getting the product to market. You need pipelines, you need infrastructure to get the product to market. So we have a challenge ahead of us. That's why it's important that we stay focused on it and we continue to fight these types of fights.
We're with Energy Secretary for the United States, Secretary of Energy Dan Brouilette. Dan, again, thanks for being with us on the John Fredericks Show. So what do you have to say, though? This is a huge, when you talked about environmental activists, Mr. Secretary, I mean, what do you have to concede that this is a tremendous victory for them? Because they have fought this pipeline. I mean, I live in Virginia. As I said, the pipeline is my radio coverage from West Virginia to the end of North Carolina where all my stations are. So we go along the pipeline. They have fought this thing tooth and nail. Now they got a tremendous victory. I mean, isn't this a victory for them? Aren't they going to be further emboldened? Hey, they got a strategy. They stopped the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Now they can stop these other pipelines.
Oh, perhaps they will be cheering and perhaps they will be celebrating. But what are they celebrating, John? They're celebrating the loss of jobs in Virginia. They're celebrating the loss of economic activity in the state. They're celebrating higher energy prices. Doesn't seem to me to be the right type of victory for Americans, for American consumers, and I think it's short-lived. So if they're going to celebrate, I'd suggest they do it quickly because this fight's going to continue.
Mr. Secretary, where are we as far as a level of energy independence? I know we're now become a net energy exporter across the world. The price war between the Saudis and the Russian Federation, which has dropped gas prices, dropped oil prices, what has that done to our ability to produce energy in a profitable manner when the barrel of oil prices are so low over this war?
Sure. Sure. No, you're going to see some folks who are going to exit the business. There's no question about that. We had folks coming into the Permian Basin, for instance, in Texas, that were highly leveraged. A lot of these folks thought they saw an economic opportunity to get into the oil business really fast. We had a bunch of Wall Street types who, with all due respect to my friends in Wall Street, thought they understood the oil business. And they're at a point now where they can't afford to make some debt payments. So you're going to see some of these smaller companies exit the field. And that's the free market. That's the way it works. And that's the way it ought to work. That being said, the major producers in America today are still very profitable at the price points that we see. So roughly $40 a barrel, which is a huge recovery from just almost 90 days ago now, when oil went down into negative price territory as a result of what you mentioned, the Saudis and the Russians. But oil is coming back very strong. We're at $40. We're in great shape. We are still, as I said earlier, the number one producer. So everybody has felt the effects of COVID-19. Production has gone down all around the world as a result of the loss of demand. But the U.S. oil industry, the U.S. natural gas industry, is still very, very strong.
All right, John Fredericks Radio Network. We're live. We're in Fairfax County, Virginia, deep inside enemy lines, Democratic territory. We are with Secretary of United States Energy, Secretary John Brouilette, with us in the Trump administration. Mr. Secretary, outline here in a couple minutes, what is the Trump administration's energy policy vision for a second term?
We're going to continue to develop all of our energy resources here in America, John. The president directed us very early in the administration to pursue what he refers to as an all-of-the-above policy. And what he means by that is exactly what the words are, all of the above. So it means coal, it means natural gas, it means nuclear energy, it means renewable energy. We're pursuing all of it, and the reason we're doing it is because it provides consumers options. And as you know, John, as an advocate for the free market, when consumers have options, they typically get better pricing, and that's what we're looking for. The president is on the side of the consumer with regard to energy production in America. He wants lower prices. He wants more energy. He wants more jobs that are associated with this important energy industry. As we come back after this pandemic, if you look back at American history, in almost every case when you study it, energy underpins so much of the economy. Practically all of the economy depends upon the production of either electricity, natural gas, some form of energy. Think about what we would be doing today in this pandemic with no electricity. What if you couldn't telework? What if your Wi-Fi didn't work at home? It underpins everything that we do. So the president is laser focused on the consumer. What do we have to do to provide the best energy pricing for American consumers? And in our view, is to produce every form of energy.
What is the percentage that you see, final question, Mr. Secretary, of sources of energy, wind, solar? If we were at the projecting the head, if Trump wins again, I think he will, we get to 2024, what in your vision, sir, would be the percentage of non-fossil fuel energy that the United States would be consuming that would be wind, solar, other kinds? 10%, 15%, 20%?
It's hard to tell exactly because it depends on what part of the country you're in, but it will continue to increase. And we've seen that over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, and it will increase even more as we develop the new advanced battery technologies, which allow the stability for the renewable industry. Right now, wind and solar are intermittent, so you absolutely need coal, nuclear, natural gas, hydro to back them up. Sun doesn't shine, you don't have any electricity. We don't want that.
Right.
So, we have to develop battery technology. It's going to increase an exact percentage. I'd be hard-pressed to tell you that's really going to depend on the consumer.
All right, John Fredericks Radio Network, we want to thank United States Energy Secretary Dan Brouilette for being with us. Mr. Secretary, we always appreciate the time, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, John. Take care.
All right, John Fredericks Radio Network.